Haze is difficult to explain. It's like a lightly smoky sky, like there's a bit of smoke or something around that interferes with vision. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's like a smoky smell. And it's not like fog either, because for there to be fog, there has to be moisture. So it's often dry. Um, so this is why the word encounters uh, works there. Haze is caused when sunlight encounters pollution particles. That is, when it meets them in some way. The light is passing through the air, and it comes into contact with those particles. Um,
Why
and
here we
then,
cannot say face because they will face the tiny particle, yeah?
so it's partly about concordance. That is, doesn't usually face, sunlight hits or touches or um, when we're talking about things that can face each other, they're either objects or they're like beings, like animals or sometimes buildings. You could talk about having a face, but the sun doesn't really have a face, and sunlight definitely doesn't have a kind of surface that faces. Um, you could talk about the sun faces um, uh, the surface of the planet. So you could imagine that they're two surfaces that are kind of faces that are looking at each other. Um, but sunlight, it doesn't work. Um, Sunlight touching or even lighting up something is possible. It literally means um, interacting with in some way.
Encounter.
Yeah, so they meet in some way. So the sunlight is passing through the air and it meets tiny particles, and they don't fully block the light from passing, but they deflect it a little bit. Um, and so we have that reduction of clarity and color. That's why they're talking about that. Um, so you could say when sunlight meets tiny pollution particles, when sunlight hits tiny pollution particles, either of those would work here as well. They might be better than encounters. And then in the next sentence, since 1988, the federal government has been monitoring. So here um, we need a verb form that fits, firstly. And then it makes sense in context that they would be paying attention to this in some way, that they would be um, recording or um, or otherwise. Yeah, monitoring implies that they're actively watching something.
Can we use another word instead of monitoring?
You could say measuring, has been measuring. You could say has been assessing. So they imply slightly different things, but they're similar. Like the idea is that they're observing. So observing visibility. The reason why observing wouldn't be ideal is because it's sort of strange if you think about it to observe visibility, because visibility is the condition of observation. So measuring is probably better because visibility here means a very abstract idea about whether the air can be sort of seen through or not.
Also,
To degrade usually means to lower the quality of
Degrade the
something.
best one. Okay.
Yeah. So haze lowers the quality of or reduces. So degradation is a process, usually a process of breaking down or becoming worse.
so degrade means lower the quality of something, and
Yeah.
sunlight encounter, we can say, and because
Yeah.
it doesn't. And
So what's happening here is that if there's tiny particles of pollution in the air, um, it's harder to see. And what we can see doesn't look as attractive. What we're seeing is a kind of hazy or smoky view of things rather than a clear sky.
Mhm. Yeah.